3.1 Traditional economies, ancient hunter-gatherer societies. So, what were the earliest economic systems like? Human beings are inherently group-oriented, social creatures. Archaeological evidence indicates that the earliest tool using human ancestors of 2 million years ago were nomadic hunter-gatherers living in groups of around 70 members, usually formed by large kinship groups, extended families. It is worth analyzing why working in groups was essential to survival, because this helps us to understand how we evolved as a group-oriented species. The earliest human societies lived on the edge of survival. They did not have the ability to store food for long periods, so obtaining a steady supply of food every day was the primary human activity. Any shortfall for a sustained period of time meant starvation. In this environment, cooperative communities had an advantage while individuals or very small groups usually did not last long. Cooperation was useful in protecting the community from predators, including animals as well as other human groups. A larger community could also engage in larger scale, risky activities. While some community members were devoted to the regular hunting and gathering activities, some high-risk endeavors with potentially large payoffs, such as hunting large game, would be undertaken by a small portion of the community. This allowed for a degree of specialization and innovation in performing tasks and resulted in a more secure food supply. Redistribution, sharing, and reciprocity within the group were defining characteristics of these early societies. As Karl Polanyi observes in The Great Transformation, the Bergdorf returning from his hunting excursion, the woman coming back from her search for roots, fruit, or leaves are expected to offer the greater part of their spoil for the benefit of the community. Producers share with their community because they can expect reciprocity. When another member of the community finds food, they too will share it. Redistribution was crucial to survival in that a family without the support of a larger group was at high risk of starvation. One bout of serious illness or a run of bad luck in hunting and gathering and the family could starve. However, with the support of the community, they could survive the lean times. Thus, while independent families did sometimes live on their own householding, it was the larger groups that were more successful. Sometimes chiefs controlled the method of redistribution in larger groups, and sometimes redistribution was done based on traditional social roles. This type of system has sometimes been labeled primitive communism because of the emphasis on common production and the relatively egalitarian sharing of the collectively produced goods. To effectively allocate tasks and goods, our human ancestors developed customs or traditions. A traditional economy is one in which resources are allocated based on communal patterns of reciprocity and redistribution, and in which tasks are allocated and knowledge and skills served through established social relationships. In this sense, a traditional economy is dominated by the cultural forces that shape the allocation of resources, goods, and tasks. In such societies, culture and tradition were crucial in making sure society's knowledge was passed down to the next generation, guaranteeing that a community had enough people with the appropriate skill set allocated to each task, hunting, tracking, gathering, tool making, etc., and in uniting society in the face of external threats. Anthropologists have been able to observe hunter-gatherer societies that have survived until the modern era, and they have seen redistributive and reciprocal behaviors firsthand. For example, Pierre Robbe describes the Inuit dividing up the meat from a bear that had been killed. Virtually all the inhabitants of the village were there, standing around the animal in 3 roughly concentric circles. Harold, the first person to see the bear, and the 5 participants, those who had been members of the hunt, then the other men of the village who were going to take part in the cutting up of the bear, and finally the women and the children. Although more of the bear meat goes to the person who spotted the bear and to those who killed the bear, some must be shared with the entire community. We see similar methods of redistribution in other societies, with all hunters and gatherers sharing what they find or kill with the community according to established social rules. In the harsh hunter-gatherer environment, the highest social status was given to those who were the most productive members of society. One of the characteristics of people in all human societies seems to be the desire to achieve social status. The desire for status is probably hardwired into us by the evolutionary process. Those who achieved a higher social status were more likely to survive and procreate. Historical evidence indicates that human beings are inherently status-seeking, which is the human propensity to strive to achieve the highest social status possible, given the values of the community in which they live. The criteria for achieving a high social status varies substantially based on the society and its priorities. Traditional economies valued the production of food and held the most productive hunters and gatherers in high esteem. Some traditional societies also developed elaborate systems of gift-giving as displays of status. As ethnologist Marcel Mauss observed in his classic work, The Gift, these communities engaged in a competitive exchanging of gifts in which gift-givers tried to outdo others in order to achieve social status. A modern parallel would be some countries in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East in which generous gestures to others, such as paying for the entire group's dinner and drinks when dining out, is considered an act worthy of esteem and praise. In contrast, capitalist economies tend to celebrate the accumulation of personal wealth. To political economists, one of the keys to analyzing the economy of a particular place is understanding how its culture shapes the status seeking of its members. Human beings work to succeed in their particular community, which means they try to act rationally within a cultural context to achieve social status. In addition to valuing productivity above other activities, most traditional communities tended to practice a form of direct democracy. Each adult had a say in major decisions, so the power of the chief was quite limited. In such communities, there was limited specialization of tasks. Everyone needed to perform a large number of tasks every day just to stay alive. The most significant division of tasks was along gender lines, with men performing the hunting and women focused on gathering, child-rearing, and cooking. Mothers would teach their daughters the knowledge and skills associated with their specialized tasks, and their daughters would follow in their footsteps. Fathers and sons followed the same pattern. The development of technology was severely limited because traditional economies produced barely enough food to survive and because of the limited amount of specialization. Technology refers to the tools, skills, and scientific knowledge that society develops in the use of resources to produce goods and services. Technology, along with cultural factors, plays a crucial role in structuring what an economic system is like. Societies that face a constant threat of starvation tend to be deeply risk-averse, and they are rarely willing to expend the labor and resources necessary to develop new technologies. Nor do they have enough surplus labor or resources to undertake substantial investments in new technologies due to their low level of productivity. Despite these limitations, archaeological evidence has proven that human groups steadily increased in size over time, indicating that larger groups had an evolutionary advantage over smaller groups. As noted above, larger groups can have a greater degree of specialization of labor. Specialization of labor is a fundamental characteristic of all human societies in which particular tasks are performed by specific individuals, rather than everyone performing all tasks. Specialization tends to improve productivity because people develop skills, becoming very good at the tasks they specialize in, tracking game, finding roots and berries, etc. Via their expertise, they can develop simple tools, technology, for their work. The larger the group, the more specialized the tasks that can exist, and the more productive that society is likely to be. Furthermore, larger groups have greater military power and are better able to dominate smaller groups. Correspondingly, those humans who could successfully function in large groups were more likely to survive. Our evolutionary past indicates that we evolved to function effectively in a large group setting. For many thousands of years, human economies continued to be dominated by traditions that specified who would undertake which tasks, how food, tools, and other resources would be used and shared, and who would achieve the highest status in the community based on his or her productivity. Human groups faced increasing pressures to grow larger in size in order to increase their military power, which necessitated improvements in productivity, via specialization and risk-taking, to produce more food to support a larger population. The invention of agriculture and food storage ushered in a new era of human development, involving settled life and the establishment of villages, towns, and even cities. The importance of being successful in a large group became even more crucial as societies grew larger and more complex.